Story 1. I could manage with 4 to 5 hours of sleep and complete a full shift at work. I can still do it now, but I would feel exhausted. Story 2. The realization that there are absolutely no adults is something I always knew, but now I truly experience it. There is no knowledgeable politician, chief executive officer, or manager. The search for a strong figure who knows what to do is pointless. Story 3. Energy level. Many observations from others. Willingness to care. Increased level of experience and wisdom. Reduced willingness to deal with difficult individuals. New physical discomfort. Social concerns. Story 4. My mental health is significantly better now than it was in my teens or 20s. This improvement is not due to an easier life on paper, but because I am finally dedicating the time and effort needed to unlearn bad habits and unhelpful thought patterns, and to process trauma. I am also more appreciative of what I have and the life I have lived up to this point. Story 5. My health deteriorated. I went from having many friends to only 2. I used to seek attention and crave validation, but now I have deactivated all my social media for peace of mind. Story 6. How we perceive time. Oh, we haven't seen each other in 4 years? Feels like it was just a couple of months ago. Story 7. When I was a teenager and in my early 20s, I didn't really fear death. I didn't have a good job or many real relationships. Now, at 36, I have a wife, 3 wonderful kids, a house, and a job I love. Now, I am afraid of death because I have something to lose. On a weekly basis, I walk outside and imagine the sky flashing bright, instantly bringing this whole situation to an end. I have never held out much hope that we will avoid nuclear annihilation for long. We seem to make too many mistakes as a species. So, yes, I have things I love now and I don't want to lose them. However, I don't hold out much hope that the fortunate life I have will last long. That's what has changed. Story 8. My will to live. During my teenage years, I had a feeling that I would have a long, happy life. Now I am almost 32, and reality has hit me hard. I no longer have the same will to live. Honestly, I wouldn't mind if I don't wake up tomorrow morning. Story 9. I feel like I spend most of my time on autopilot. After decades of not getting closer to my dreams from when I was a teenager, I have sort of given up and accepted the routine of working hard on weekdays and spending my weekends anxious about the upcoming week. As a result, I have very little energy, my libido has decreased significantly, and even small inconveniences make me unreasonably irritable. Story 10. Energy levels are lower. Recovery time from physical activity takes longer. Flexibility has decreased. I still play basketball at 36, but my legs do not move like they used to. Cannot sleep late no matter how hard I try. Story 11. I was suicidal as a teenager. Something changed when I turned 30, and my perspective shifted. I made it this far, why not keep going? I'm 33 now. I've worn a variety of different hats, worked in many jobs, and I'm finally settling into what I want as a career. To the teenagers who are hopefully reading this, your bullies in school are insignificant. Once you leave high school, you'll never have to see them again. Don't let the opinions of others bring you down. You know yourself better than anyone else does. You also do not have to go to college after you graduate. Consider attending trade school instead. There are already enough unqualified influencers and streamers. Go out, work with your hands, and realize you can earn much better money in a trade. It's hard, honest work. There is a constant need for laborers and equipment operators. There will always be things that need to be welded into place. There are structures that will need to be demolished. It's extremely rewarding, and you make great connections. Story 12. My communication and conflict resolution skills have improved significantly. I learned new ways to handle arguments and sensitive topics. It helps that the hormones from my teenage years are gone, and I can see how poor my parents' communication was, as well as how far I have come since then. My husband has greatly contributed to this improvement. Every teenager wants to fit in, even within a marginalized group. Now, I focus on being myself without worrying about specific labels or groups. Story 13. Understanding I don't have to wait for happiness. I used to put so much emphasis on the future and the things I wanted to do. Once I have this, then I will be happy, or I'll be happy on this day because that is happening. Just going through the motions until that anticipated event occurred left a lot of time for me on autopilot. Every day isn't perfect, but I find things I enjoy in quiet moments of reflection, thinking about what would make me happy in the moment. Could be something as simple as looking outside at a butterfly or petting my cat. Story 14. I hurt not all the time, but more than I thought I would. My knees, back, legs, hands, wrists, and joints ache. Every now and then, I experience a sharp stabbing pain in my chest, and I think to myself, oh man, this is it. Story 15. I care much less about what anyone thinks of anything I do. I no longer have the energy to worry about their opinions. I have bigger problems. Story 16. I am about to turn 30 this year, and my eyesight worsens daily. As a teenager, I was not diligent about wearing my glasses, but nowadays, when I wake up, it feels overwhelming. Story 17. Overall vitality used to be exceptional, with limitless energy and potential. Nowadays, I am struggling to get through the hours. Story 18. I don't hate kids anymore. When I was a teenager and throughout most of my 20s, I found kids to be a frustrating sight. I disliked the crying, the screaming, and everything about them. Now I love them. Whenever there are kids around me, they always put a smile on my face. Story 19. I miss being able to eat whatever I want without thinking about exercising. I have managed to maintain my weight in my 30s, but it means I need to be mindful of my meals and schedule daily exercise. Story 20. Realizing I'm still here and people don't magically die at 25. Also, your parents aren't always right. My will to live has increased out of spite. I will only deal with nonsense if it involves feeding myself or helping others. I have no tolerance for debating with unreasonable individuals. Story 21. My age doubled, as did my weight, my problems, and my stress. My God, this is depressing. Story 22. I have more confidence and care less about what others think. I am more accepting of the ups and downs of good and bad times, focusing on what I can control. I feel more set in my ways and value my time much more. Story 23. I am much more cynical now than I was in the past. The pandemic also significantly increased my depression to the point where I no longer feel like the same person I was in my early 20s, let alone during my teenage years. Story 24. My self-confidence. I am comfortable in my own skin and am never worried about feeling embarrassed. I like myself. Teenage me could never enjoy life the way that 33-year-old me does. Life just keeps getting better. Story 25. This question is impossible to answer. It would be better to ask what hasn't changed. At 30 years old, I realize how much life I still have ahead of me, assuming I live a long life past 70. Alternatively, I consider how long it will take to reach 60. There is so much time. I also feel much better starting college now than I would have if I had gone straight out of high school or in my 20s. The takeaway is that life is incredibly long. Remembering my childhood and high school reminds me of how much time has passed and how long the next 30 years will be. Story 26. Confidence, wisdom, strength, height, intelligence, accomplishments, and romantic relationships have all improved. As a teenager, you are not yet in your fully developed form, both in terms of maturity and physicality. If you focus on self-improvement during your teens and 20s, you will thrive in your 30s. Eat healthily, moderate your alcohol intake, and avoid hard drugs. Start working out and maintain the habit. Don't neglect cardiovascular exercise. Education, career, and other aspects of life will follow. Stay hydrated, get sufficient sleep, and use sunscreen. Be kind to yourself and others. That's the key, though it's easier said than done. Story 27. The younger generations are becoming more conservative and less accepting instead of more progressive and accepting. Story 28. I used to care about everyone's problems deeply. Now, I just don't have the capacity to care about your unfaithful girlfriend or the overpriced sneakers that sold out. Story 29. Well, I'm a woman now. I imagine that counts as substantial. I could have done without the autoimmune disease, though. Story 30. In my teens, I always dated the popular guys who liked to be the life of the party and the center of attention. Now I prefer dating the calm and composed nerdy guy who keeps to himself. Story 31. The climate for Jews in my country has changed significantly. I grew up in a world with very few concerns and no synagogue security to a reality where events require armed guards. It became evident that I was perceived as an outsider and dehumanized by many people I once considered friends. Looking back, they may have harbored similar feelings but were either unaware or kept them to themselves. The difference in climate is stark compared to 20 years ago when I was a teenager. Story 32. I have more responsibility now, and I don't even have children. I would still be happy to do many of the things I enjoyed in my teenage years with my friends. My core friend group is from my teens, and they mean everything to me from a family perspective. Additionally, with enough experience, you begin to see people's behavior patterns more clearly. Nothing anyone does is really shocking. It's just inevitable. You may find yourself feeling more apathetic toward most things as long as you don't need to be involved. Story 33. I was always freezing cold. Then I turned 30, and now I am constantly feeling overheated. Sweating and all. Story 34. I am bald now. I used to be a size 30, wearing size 40 because it was cool. Now I am size 40, praying one day I will be a size 30 again. I used to be able to play sports without stretching. Now I need to stretch before I use the bathroom or I can barely wipe myself. I used to need to be right. Now I admit I am wrong just to end conversations. I used to never be home. Now I won't leave the house unless I absolutely have to. I used to be able to fall asleep in a computer chair. Now if I sleep on a bed that is too soft, I lose a day from back pain. Eating a whole pizza and washing it down with a 2-liter drink was normal. Now 2 slices and water give me acid reflux. Dinner was at 9 or 10 p.m. Now dinner at 7 requires me to watch what I eat or I cannot sleep at a reasonable hour. I thought getting to 200 pounds would be the end of the world, and now I am closer to 300 than 200. Story 35. I am responsible for more than just myself, which has significantly changed since my teenage years. I have more money but less time. I need to be mindful of what I eat and drink, as well as how I use my body. I am no longer as energetic as I used to be. My teenage years had their advantages and disadvantages, just like my 20s and 30s. It's important to consciously appreciate the good aspects and actively work on improving the negative ones. Story 36. I can't skate like I used to. I feel a little more tired, but other than that, not much has changed. It's just general aging. I'm 35, but to be fair, I've always been active. Even I can feel it lately. Story 37. The distance I can run at full speed. My income. My trust in discounted and low-budget products. The duration of an injury. The time it takes me to reset for another round. The number of single friends I have. How I use my free time. The time I spend planning for the future. My self-confidence. Story 38. The amount I care about what others think has diminished greatly. I found it amusing when someone commented on the size of my ass because that's true as well. Story 39. Being absolutely nihilistic in my views, I used to always look for some sort of light no matter how dim. These days, I don't even bother looking. Story 40. I'm not in my 30s. I'm 44. But this question shocked me. What has changed since my teenage years? I don't know every single thing in my life. Honestly, I remember feeling so grown up as a teenager. But I see teenagers now and think they are just little babies, like real children. Everything changes from childhood as you develop into adulthood. Your 20s can be confusing. Some people are making good money, while others are broke. Some have cars and some don't. Some people date a lot, while others feel lonely living in rental apartments. Generally, most people in their 20s are still very young. At 22, you're barely out of your teens. It seems to take most people through their 20s to figure it out, and many would probably agree that true adulthood, confidence in oneself, and a happy relationship come later, along with lessons learned about romantic relationships, typically resulting in more financial stability and happiness at work. Physically, at 44, I notice a lot of changes with my skin, body, and metabolism. It's much harder to stay in shape. I work at it every day, but my goal is to be healthy and fit and to be the best version of myself now. By 40, there's no sense in trying to look exactly like a 21-year-old. Your body changes in various ways, not necessarily for the worse, but just differently. Overall, I'm much more confident. My sex life is phenomenal, and I'm more particular about the company I keep. I have many acquaintances and a few good friends, and I really don't bother with unnecessary drama. Story 41. When I was a teenager, I was very passionate about politics and supporting my political party. Now, I think all politicians on both sides are corrupt, and I no longer believe in anyone in government. Story 42. Being more confident in myself came from having greater knowledge and experience with others, realizing that many of them were just improvising. I felt freer to assert myself. Stay healthy, and your 30s can be just like your teenage years. Only better, more money, more stable moods, and greater self-assuredness. Promise. Don't let anyone tell you it's old. Story 43. Internet culture and the overall community. When I was a teenager graduating high school from 2011 to 2013, traditional social media sites and platforms like Reddit were approached by most people as fun places to hang out and share experiences. Users posted funny memes that felt like inside jokes, allowing anyone who understood them to have a good laugh. Reddit, in particular, had a communal vibe where everyone collectively understood what was acceptable, and problematic users who tried to provoke arguments were typically discouraged from the site. Today, everything seems focused on individualism. There is little sense of an inclusive community anywhere. It feels like you're either with us or against us. Almost every meme posted nowadays appears to be a petty attack on a person or group, which is disheartening. That old internet culture provided me with a sense of therapy. I understood it, engaged with it, and contributed to it. It helped me develop the character I have today, which I am quite proud of. I will continue to strive to be optimistic and welcoming to others and to have the patience to listen to different perspectives. It is disheartening to lose what was once a reliable source of mental health support. Story 44. Rent prices. The mentality that I had was that I had my whole life ahead of me, but now I am deeply involved in the life I chose. Luckily, I am happy and love it. Story 45. I used to be able to eat anything. Now, if I eat cereal, too much bread, tomatoes, too much oil, or too much sugar, I feel like my stomach lining is dissolving. Story 46. Almost everything, but mostly how I perceive time and struggle. In my teens, I thought I had to prove myself, that success meant achieving things quickly, and that pain was something to overcome. Now, in my 30s, I understand that growth takes time, presence matters more than speed, and suffering isn't something to fix. It's something to learn from. Also, naps are absolutely underrated in my teens and are a peak survival skill in my 30s. Story 47. I have adult money and less self-control than I used to when I was a teenager. You can ask all my board games, books, figurines, Dungeons and Dragons dice, video games, a lot of two-day hobby projects, cookbooks, and half-finished projects what they think about that. Story 48. I can't jump off swing sets mid-swing anymore without an ambulance ride to the hospital for broken knees and ankles. Story 49. I didn't hate the world for just existing that much. Now it's full throttle. I also care about the road quality now. Story 50. I realize now that I was going through a very harsh phase of pragmatism. I didn't like the fluff, the emotions, or extenuating circumstances. Everything came down to what was the best outcome. Now I understand that I was setting rigid rules for myself and others. While I think I needed that as a youth, I feel sad for that same youth who couldn't or wouldn't express empathy to others. Story 51. My ability to party like I used to has not diminished as much as my desire to do so. Story 52. I am less interested in playing games with people. If I don't like it, I'm out and will find someone else to play with. Story 53. My patience for difficult people is limited. I am in my early 40s, and my capacity to care has significantly diminished over the years. You truly run out of concern when you see the world clearly. It is a challenging place. I am not old enough to feel nostalgic for a better past, yet not young enough to possess the carefree invincibility of my 20s, believing that no matter how many times you are knocked down, you can always get back up. Story 54. My joints feel worn out, and my back seizes up if I sit down for too long. I believe that exercise and regular movement are now essential. It took reaching my early 30s to realize this. Story 55. You know how you have to warm up an old car in winter so it runs properly when you go out in town? It's the same with my body. Once warmed up, I'm good to go. Story 56. Not quite 30, but close. I got a job with benefits that mostly involves sitting at a desk. I am feeling my body more than I used to and learning to take care of it because I am suddenly realizing it is not invulnerable. Story 57. Confidence in a broader sense. I have figured out who I am as a person and what I want out of my life and relationships. I never had that understanding before. I was just floating along, always feeling out of place. While that feeling is not completely gone, it is definitely much less pronounced. Story 58. My self-awareness improved, as did my confidence. I used to dislike how I looked and didn't want to stand out. I often wore hoodies and didn't talk much. While I'm still somewhat reserved and introverted, I now have a higher opinion of myself and try to present my best self whenever I go out. I can initiate conversations and talk to strangers more confidently, and I share my feelings with people close to me. I am also much more compassionate toward myself. However, being 30 did not magically fix everything. Growing up through my 20s and the challenges posed by my old habits enabled me to develop and make better decisions. I realized that I wouldn't lead a fulfilling life if I remained stagnant, so I forced myself into uncomfortable situations to learn, or I often found myself in them by chance. College was particularly helpful. Otherwise, I might still be living in a rural town with no opportunities. Story 59. I used to be somewhat liberally aligned, though I wasn't politically aware enough to realize it. Now that I have financial goals and responsibilities, the pendulum has swung the other way, though I still remain quite removed from the daily political discourse. Story 60. I used to be able to sleep on hardtile with a backpack pillow for 45 minutes and feel good for a day. Now, if I sleep in an uncomfortable position on my expensive mattress, my back hurts for a week. Story 61. Many of the comments made by others focus on changes in the number of friends and responsibilities. Recently, I find myself making choices that remind me of my teenage years. I have eliminated streaming services and now rent movies and TV shows from the library. I use an iPod for music, started reading again last year, spend more time outside playing sports, and my phone screen time is around 1.5 hours a day. Story 62. My salary increased slightly. My wisdom has grown. My patience has improved. My tolerance has increased. I have moved beyond materialism. I care less about things, people, and life in general. I prioritize myself more. I feel more tired. Story 63. When I was a teenager, I lived as if I would die young. Now I am paying for those decisions and trying to make healthier choices. Story 64. Learning to put my needs into the equation of a relationship is essential. If the partner does not recognize this as important for both of us, it is a red flag. Story 65. Being in my early 30s, I've noticed which of my friends took care of themselves and which ones did not. My friends who maintain a reasonably healthy diet and engage in moderate exercise feel fantastic as they enter their 40s, while my friends who eat poorly and barely move feel unwell. It is quite a mystery. Story 66. I went from fit to overweight. I'm not extremely large, but my beer belly is very noticeable. My metabolism is slowing down, combined with increased drinking and less exercise. Getting married probably contributed to this change as well. Story 67. I am genuinely nicer to people. During my teenage years, I was a people pleaser and naturally charismatic, so I confused others' enjoyment of my company with being nice. However, I rarely delved deep into my friendships or offered help unless asked. Now, I feel my empathy is at an all-time high. I could be returning home on the train from a terrible day, dealing with an irritating boss, and coping with a screaming baby the entire journey. Yet I still carry a suitcase up the stairs for an elderly person. I might even chat and learn some interesting stories from an elderly lady. I enjoy engaging with others far more than I used to because I no longer feel forced to. Story 68. Went down. Delusion. Confidence. Trust in others. Metabolism. Ducks given. Friend circle. Went up. Money. Organization. Responsibility. Self-reliance. Self-care. Rebellion. Story 69. My gut health, joints, ligaments, and metabolism were fine from ages 13 to 29. When I turned 30, everything went downhill. Story 70. My view of friendship and family. My high school friends and a large part of my family abandoned me so quickly that I realized we were never actually close. We were just around each other. Some mental damage occurred from that experience as well as from the way it happened. I will refrain from going into too much detail. However, in the long run, it helped me distinguish the difference. The relationships that I still have hold more weight and meaning. I want someone in my life because they want to be there and because there is mutual respect. And that is what I have now. Story 71. You realize you have gained the ability to see action and consequence, and then you realize you have become your parents. Story 72. My ability to drink large quantities of alcohol was remarkable. I could consume a lot and feel fine throughout the night and the next morning. Now, after just one drink, I find myself searching for a comfortable spot to take a nap. If I have 3 or more drinks, I feel terrible the next day. Nowadays, I only have about 1 drink a week, if that. Story 73. I am in the best shape of my life at the moment, but everything still hurts a considerable amount more. I am 36 years old, and I believe the majority of the aging process for me has been concentrated in my lower back. Story 74. The ability of my body to regenerate is essential. Additionally, neglecting certain muscle groups caused pain and highlighted the need for correction. Story 75. Everything about who I am as a person, my self-confidence, my understanding of the world and life, my intelligence, the life I have built, my taste in men, my appearance, my clothing size, my style, and my hair color has evolved. The only things that have remained consistent are my values and desires in life. Story 76. I am narrowing down my friend group. I am still best friends with some of my high school friends, but the group was much larger back then. I associate with those who provide value and support in my life, and I reciprocate that support. Story 77. I have lost interest in alcohol, except on special occasions. Sometimes, simply reaching into the passenger seat causes muscle pain. I no longer care what others think about the things I enjoy, such as music and hobbies. I feel more confident and direct. Story 78. I go to shows downtown. Now I avoid them unless there's seating because I can't stand for hours like I used to. Additionally, there's less parking, more people, and the ticketing companies have ruined the experience for me. Story 79. Self-confidence is hard to find in your 20s when you are relatively inexperienced with how the adult world works, especially if you did not grow up surrounded by confident people or had individuals in your life who diminished you. Self-confidence provides clarity on who you want or don't need in your life, whose opinions matter to you, helps you lose the fear of failure, and clarifies the things you truly want to do with your life compared to societal expectations. I love it and would not trade my 30s for my 20s any day. Story 80. I used to care about what people thought of me. Now, I do not care what people think about me and what I do. Story 81. I feel much more secure in who I am. I still experience some social anxiety, but I am capable of much more than I used to be, and it no longer dictates my decisions. I have recovered from a severe eating disorder as well. I came out as queer and transgender since then. I think my younger self would be somewhat surprised but also proud of me and admire the life I have built. It is far from perfect, but there was a time when I did not think I would make it to 30. Story 82. My tolerance for alcohol has changed. At parties, I could drink heavily and feel perfectly fine the next morning. Now, if I drink too much, I end up feeling miserable and sick. Story 83. Went from having a large social circle where you would see each other often to a small circle where you see each other rarely. People move away, some settle down, and others experience changes in commitments. Financial situations vary, making it increasingly difficult to gather a group of people together to catch up. Story 84. I became more serious, not really sure why. Perhaps it is the weight of the world. I still have lots of enjoyment and adventures, but I don't laugh as much as I used to. I am more introspective now. Story 85. Sometimes, when I wake up on the wrong side of the bed and stretch my arm a little further than usual to turn off the light or grab the water, my shoulder muscle gets pulled or cramped. Story 86. The pain is overwhelming, and its origins are unknown. I threw my back out while showering once. I didn't fall or do anything drastic. I just moved too fast. Story 87. My happiness. In my teens, I thought I would be a miserable, broke loser in my 30s if I even made it. Now I'm 34, with an amazing wife, a good job, a nice house, great friends, a couple of dogs, and 3 of my attainable dream cars. Life is really good. Story 88. Hangovers are not what you might expect. I experienced the worst hangovers of my life during my teenage years. Now that I'm 36, I can drink excessively and still feel fine the next day. Story 89. I remember when the opinions of others never crossed my mind. How did I become so weak-minded? Story 90. A 30-year-old male for reference. Positives. My life is in order. I have financial stability, and I don't care what others think. Life is pretty great. Negatives. I have back pain. Story 91. I had a staggering amount of responsibilities. By the time I was in my 30s, I owned a house and had a baby. These were the 2 things I had tried to avoid throughout my teenage years, along with all the other responsibilities. Story 92. I broke my foot at 24. It was difficult, but it healed, and overall it's okay. I tore 2 ligaments in that same foot in the same area at 29, and the pain took a long time to heal. I broke my wrist last September, and it still doesn't feel healed. Your body breaking down and not healing itself as well becomes noticeable around the age of 30, give or take depending on the person. Story 93. My energy level remains low despite having experienced serious bouts of depression and anxiety during my teenage years. Even when I am not feeling depressed, I still struggle with low energy. Story 94. I was a teenager before September 11th, 2001. The world is a very different place than it was in the 1990s. Even now, I reflect on those years as other generations reflect on the 1920s or 1950s. When I watch documentaries about that time, I realize it wasn't as good as I remember, but I recall that people cared about Columbine and whether or not the president was truthful. Story 95. In my teens and early 20s, I watched a lot of anime and played many video games, but I was constantly hanging out with friends. I ate a lot of fast food, yet I still managed to maintain a savings account. I was able to work out 6 days a week, which I know isn't necessarily healthy. Now, in my 30s, I haven't been able to watch anime in years due to disinterest, and I only occasionally play one video game. I still hang out with a few close friends, but not as often as before. I have also developed an interest in philosophy and find it hard to ignore politics. I cook at home much more than I go out, yet my savings account is smaller. I now work out maybe 3 days a week. Politics are difficult to ignore for pretty much everyone these days, in my defense. Story 96. Passion for my hobbies. It's incredible how much I loved drawing as a teenager. Yet I struggle to find even a fraction of that motivation now, despite my desire to rekindle it. Story 97. I feel much more relaxed and less affected by outside stressors. I am also less concerned about who I should be and where I should end up. Overall, I am happier by a significant margin. Story 98. I know what is wrong with me and I am less socially inept, I guess. I live with a guy and we have a child and a house. I did not have that before. My father has passed away, which is a significant improvement. I also have a smartphone and my own computer, and I have 2 cats. I was not allowed to have a cat back then. Story 99. Even with all the chaos lately, transgender individuals are much more accepted than when I was a teenager. In related news, I also identify with a different gender now. Story 100. I thought I was invincible. Worse, I believed my parents were too. The reality of mortality is a significant change, at least in my perspective on life. Story 101. I could have sworn I didn't want children all the way through my 20s, but now I have just had my first and I can't wait to have more. Story 102. I got clean and sober and was diagnosed with several disabilities, but I am happier within myself. Although I might be broader than I was as a teenager, working on getting healthier is a challenge. However, I appreciate what I see in myself and in the mirror more than I ever did as a cynical, self-loathing teen. I have also accepted my autism and no longer try to push through the symptoms or mask as much. I embrace my individuality. I eat what I like, and I am unique, but that is just me, and I no longer feel the need to hide it. Story 103. Concern over massive population increases has arisen, primarily due to immigration. Having a cell phone transitioned from being a convenient and enjoyable accessory to becoming essential, as there is now an expectation to own one. Film has largely disappeared while digital cameras have greatly improved. Television series have generally begun producing fewer episodes per season, similar to the format typically seen in British series, particularly those created by streaming services. MySpace has faded away, as has Yahoo Answers. Facebook transformed from a trendy platform for young adults to a space primarily used by older individuals. Prices for nearly everything have risen significantly. Windows has increased in size but decreased in performance. Linux has become easier to install due to broader hardware support, but has also become less independent, which is not necessarily a positive development. Microsoft has negatively impacted its word processing software. Adobe has migrated their products to the cloud. Digital rights management on music purchases has largely become obsolete, with many platforms shifting primarily to streaming services. The quality of can openers has declined. Story 104. My muscles' ability to remain flexible without actively following a stretching schedule. Story 105. I care very little about what others think of me. I also do not expect anyone to respect me, nor do I take disrespectful behavior personally. Story 106. I am a 41-year-old, and the significant aspect is friendships. I had many friends in high school, people I saw every day and spent time with. However, as I got older, those friendships faded. Some lasted into my late 20s, but by 30, I only spoke to maybe 2 or 3. Now, I occasionally hear from one of them. Story 107. Willingness to work hard to achieve goals. If something requires a lot of effort, it no longer phases me. I'll get it done. The teenager I once was would have been quite unwilling. Story 108. The knowledge that I am both autistic and have attention deficit/hyperactivity disorder. The amount of water I drink. Being employed. The amount of exercise I do. My weight. My height. The level of money I have. Story 109. It is unfortunate how bitter and cynical many people my age have become. Life tends to wear you down. The unfortunate part is that most of them have pretty decent lives, which makes me think there are underlying issues within our society. Story 110. Aside from the typical issues such as body aches and reduced tolerance to medications, I transitioned from being hypersocial to almost asocial. I believe that having children is a significant factor in this change. Long story short, I no longer feel the need to spend as much time around people as I did 10 years ago. There are positive aspects as well. I learn much faster. I can read people better. I am more patient and empathetic, and I am no longer chasing after money as I used to. My priorities are now more focused on designing my work in a way that allows me to earn a similar amount of money as I did 5 years ago, but by working fewer hours each week. This shift in mindset has been significant for me. I always thought that more money equated to more happiness, but now I believe that more free time leads to greater happiness, even if it means letting go of higher salaries. Story 111. I went from wishing people would understand me to focusing on understanding others instead. I was not a good active listener. I rarely let people finish their thoughts and often interrupted them to express my own ideas. Fast forward to my early 30s, and I realized that many people are not truly listened to. Now, I spend most of my conversations just listening and asking questions to help people feel that what they say matters and is being understood. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.